Hello and welcome to Podcast 2, a follow-up to Podcast 1. Last week we successfully reduced the whip pile from 9 whips down to 4, which concluded in the 4 active work in progresses currently being the Aigues by Audrey Borrego, the Aurora pattern from the Minerva Style Book Volume 38, the High Neckline and Unusual Sleeves from the 5th May 1934 issue of the Australasian. In short, we're gonna call it Coast since I made it out of Holscott Coast. And finally, the 1918 jumper with rose pattern borders by Drops Design, which we're gonna call Drops Retro for short. I have assigned each of these projects a color, so let's start with the Aigues. To recap, the Aigues is a pattern by Audrey Borrego which uses sportwear yarn and 3.5mm needles. I am not following these, as I opted for fingering weights and 3mm needles. Despite these changes, I am still meeting gauge. So last week I said, I'm knitting the most on it at the moment. So let's see if that's true. We left it last week at this point. I still have a little more, and then we're at the armhole. On Saturday, and I'm counting from Saturday late afternoon, early evening. So Saturday is cut in half, just bear with me there. Anyway, on Saturday, I finished the last 5 rows of the lace pattern before joining for the armhole and put the back piece on a spare needle. Then nothing until Wednesday, where I picked up for the front the 10 rows of short rows and then the 14 rows of the neck increase. And that was it for the Aigues this week. I will pass the specimen around so you can see it for yourself. But I think I did a mostly good job on the pickup. And I do find it kind of interesting to observe that after the pickup, the short rows that appeared as slanted before appear straight now, as you can see here. Furthermore, when the object is lying down, the shaping of the neckline appears as a straight line on the neck edge. But you can observe the slant on the shoulder side at this stage of the project. Interesting. Moving on to Aurora, which is a pattern from 1934 that was published in volume 38 of the Minerva Style Book. It originally is a dress knitted in 3.25mm needles, which I am again not following, as I am only making the top part on 2.5mm needles. But due to that conversion, I am in need to add a bottom hem, which I choose twisted rib for in 2.25mm needles, and a split hem look. So where did we left off? I did 10 rows on this one, and the cast on, so that's maybe 12 rows. And then here I also want to do 12 rows, and then I reassess. And reassess I did. But first on Saturday, I did the last 3 rows of the twisted rib on 2.25mm needles. I did some calculations on how to proceed, but did not do the proceeding yet. That had to wait until Thursday, where I added 11 rows of stockinette stitch in the same 2.25mm needles on the front and the back piece. Then on Friday, I did 2 rows to join the piece in the round, this time on 2.5mm needles. And that was it for Aurora this week. Again, I will pass the whip around so you can see. As a funny observation on this one, we have that the front and back piece appear to be slightly different colors, which is unusual as I did them in blocks. First the front part ribbing, then the back part ribbing, then back to the front to do the stockinette stitch and back to the back piece doing the stockinette stitch. Regardless, it appears that the front piece is one color and the back piece is a slightly different color. One appears slightly lighter than the other. How come? I don't know, as they are made from the same yarn skein. Mysterious. Proceeding to the project I'm calling Coast, because I am making it out of Wolfsgaunt Coast. But the Australasian issue from the 5th May 1934 calls it High Neckline and Unusual Sleeves. And unusual they are indeed. Here I am following the pattern suggestions for a change, as I am using the recommended light fingering weight yarn and the recommended needle size of 3.75 millimeters. Noteworthy might also be that the pattern is knitted from side to side. So what did I have to say about it last week? I have the back already done. Let me show you that one. That's the back piece. It's the second one I'm making. I already made it once in a fingering weight. It is indeed the second one I am making of these. So this is the one I already made. I think I'm in the shoulder slug moment at the moment. So let's see if I got out of this slug. On Saturday, I did 2 rows on the shoulder. Then nothing until Tuesday, where I did the last 4 rows of the first shoulder, and then 9 rows of the neckline decrease, followed by 3 rows straight. Then on Thursday, I added the last 9 rows before the diamond pattern. And just this morning, I added this diamond pattern. Please feel free to have a look yourself at the lace insert. And finally the one I call Drops Retro, because it is from the Drops Retro collection. This pattern specifically was published in 1989 under the name 1918 Jumper with Rose Pattern Borders. But if you go to Garn Studio's website, you can suggest a better name yourself if you so desire. It is a DK weight and uses 4mm and 2.5mm for the ribbing. Last week I did the swatch with the super soft held double and I need to do a little bit of math to figure it out. And figure it out we did, because still the same day I remeasured the swatch and did some calculations, and actually I wasn't that much of a gauge and could just block it to size, making it officially cast on ready. But it didn't happen that same day. It happened on Sunday, where I cast on and did the first 2 rows. On Monday, I added another row before discovering that I had created a Möbius spiraler. I twisted the ribbing when I joined it in the round. So I unraveled the whole thing again, which gave me the opportunity to weight the yarn before I start, just for fun data collection. But anyways, I casted it on again and did 9 rows. On Tuesday I added another 2 rows, and on Wednesday I added another 3 rows. Then on Thursday another 4, and on Friday another 4. which completed the 7 centimeters of ribbing. That same day, I did the increase row on 4mm needles and did the first 3 rows of the stockinette stitch, which completes this week for the drops red row. I think interesting to note on this one is the extremely smaller needle size for the ribbing, which made the knitting experience somewhat tight. And still, the knit stitches on the ribbing appear visually larger than the knit stitches on the 4mm stockinette stitch. Fascinating. So, to summarize, I knit every day. On some days more, on some days less. On some days on one project, on some days on multiple. Some projects get minimal but regular progress, some more sporadically but in bigger steps. I'm just glad nobody fell behind and nobody new was added. With that, we conclude and adjourn until next time. I wish you all a good week and goodbye. Happy knitting!